Hello, everybody. Hello. Okay, so my biggest fear is public speaking. And so I've created a panel. So bear with me, because I also have a condition where I forget words and meanings, and it's connected to my PTSD, and it's annoying. So if I stumble, just give me a minute to get myself together. I will get there eventually. So I've also written kind of a script, which I do plan to go off at times, but I'm so nervous, I knew I'd need it. So I'm just going to do a little introduction now. So, hello ClexaCon. I'm Kerry, and I'm the founder and project manager of Positive Change Arts Projects, an umbrella organisation for the creative, therapeutic and political work I do. I like to collaborate, which is why you can see all of our beautiful and handsome faces. A brief overview of I Have a Query. I decided I wanted to create something that would allow me to be an absolute geek, get back into filmmaking, give back to our LGBTQIA+ community, and help educate both myself and others. I Have a Query is a live panel and a web series. Each episode will coincide with the panel topic. The first panel and episode will focus on non-binary representation, and the second panel and episode, bisexual representation. With the web series, I hope to build something that can promote those of us who are doing amazing things but are often overlooked because we don't have a huge social media following or the funds to promote our work in the way we might like to. I will be interviewing individuals and groups that already have a platform, and those who don't have a platform but have something they would like to that already have a platform, and those who don't but have something they would like to share with a wider audience. I'm now going to introduce the panel. Meet Han, Moyo, and Toby. We all use they/them pronouns, but you may also use he/him pronouns for Moyo. As this is a non-binary panel, you are safe to assume we are all non-binary. However, this will mean something different to each of us. To begin the panel, we're going to take it in turns to share a little bit about our experiences and feelings surrounding our gender identities. Following this, we have each prepared a question for the rest of the panel, and we will take it in turns to ask our question, and each panellist is welcome to jump in with their response to that question. Towards the end of the panel, we will open up the floor, during which we welcome you to ask respectful questions. So, personal boundaries during ClexaCon. If anyone has any further queries, we will make ourselves available for 1 hour at the start of the party this evening, but after this time, we ask that you respect our personal boundaries and let us enjoy the remainder of the convention. Moyo politely requests you do not attempt to contact them in any capacity after the convention ends. Toby is happy for anyone who isn't pressed to contact them on Facebook or via email. Han is happy for you to contact them on social media. Links are available on the ClexaCon panelist website. And if anyone would like to speak with me or get involved with I Have a Query, you can contact me by email, and I will have some business cards at the end if anyone would like to take one. And tomorrow, you can catch me on the Deaf and Disabled LGBTQ representation panel, and both Han and I on the panel Pride and Prejudice, How Queer Representation in the Media Affects Your Mental Health. And I'm done. So, now over to Han, who's going to share some of their story.
All right, I'm just going to quickly introduce myself. My name is Han, I'm 24, and I'm an artist, activist, and performer. I'm originally from Ireland, but I've been living in Edinburgh for the last 3 years. In my work, I like to focus on narratives of gender, sexuality, and mental health, and in my drag, I like to celebrate and explore queer masculinities while trashing cisnormative toxic masculinities, naturally. So now I'm just going to talk a little bit about what being non-binary means to me and my kind of journey to get here. I came out as a lesbian when I was 15, living in rural Ireland. I went to a Catholic secondary school, so hypervisibility in my queerness has always kind of been an element for me. And from quite an early age, I aligned myself to like butch, gender non-conforming ways of presenting myself, which didn't help with the hypervisibility, but it's all felt right. When I moved away from home, I started having a chance to meet more queer people, living in a city and exploring my sexuality and my gender. And by the time I moved to Scotland 3 years ago, I kind of took it as a clean slate, and I shortened my name to Han, and I started going by neutral pronouns. So originally what made me start questioning my gender was my rejection of my femininity from like pretty much as soon as I hit puberty. And I, to this day, still kind of sometimes back and forth on, am I a man? What does this all mean? What do I want to do? Where do I want to go? But right now I'm very happy being a non-binary person, and that feels just right for me. When I was questioning, the sentence that kept kind of swirling my mind was like, why do I have to care about this? Why do I have to be a woman? Why can't I just be Han? Well, I'm just Han, I'm just me. But I was lucky enough to go to university and have access to authors like Judith Butler and Kate Bornstein, and they were like revelatory for me. Butler is entirely inaccessible if you're not academically minded, which I barely am. But there are plenty of great readers if you ever want to kind of get your own little intro into queer gender theory. Right now, I would describe myself as a transmasc genderqueer person. But funnily enough, it was when I accepted myself as a non-binary person that I finally felt able to reclaim elements of femininity that I had really felt so uncomfortable with for so long, because with my new knowledge and self kind of being grounded in myself, I could finally express that femininity without feeling female. I enjoy gender. I have a lot of fun with it. I do experience dysphoria sometimes. I tend to bind most of the time. But ultimately, I think gender can be this wonderful thing that you can play with, and you can take things from it and disregard whatever you want and create your own, whatever you want to be and whatever feels right for you. And that's what I have to say about that.
Okay, so since I was about 7 or 8, I remembered liking both boys and girls' clothes. Usually I mixed and matched them up. And I loved it when adults didn't know if I was a boy or a girl, especially when my local churchgoers referred to me as a boy, and my mum would politely tell them, no, that's my daughter. So I don't ever recall feeling like I was a girl or a boy, certainly not the way that I heard other people talking about their gender. And I could rarely relate to those expressing binary genders. I've always just been Kerry. When I still lived here in London, on a Tuesday night I would go to bar whatever, and I made friends with lots of trans and or non-binary people, and prior to this I never heard the word non-binary before. So talking more and more with non-binary folks, things started to click and fall into place for me, and I realised that was me too, that I'm non-binary. It was really exciting, and actually it's still really exciting.
Just put in for a second. Yeah. Sorry to butt in. I meant to say earlier that if we use any terms or words that you don't understand, I know that sometimes this can get a bit academic or whatever, just raise your hand and we're happy to explain.
I forgot where I was. Sorry. It's all right. I was excited, I remember that bit. This was a really exciting time for me because I had never had the language to describe my gender identity before. I didn't know I had other options beyond female or male. I grew up in a small town with very few openly gay people, let alone trans folks. So I assumed as a teenager I was a lesbian, and that was that. And I went on to live my life that way until I was 27, but I was also wrong because I'm not a lesbian. So sadly, not everyone who knew me appreciated my newfound joy in learning the language to describe what I had been feeling since I was a kid. Meanwhile, I was excited that I finally felt comfortable wearing whatever gendered clothing I wanted, and that I didn't have to be a woman or a man. I am Kerry, and I am non-binary. And those who didn't and don't appreciate me embracing my identity are missing out, because I am so much happier. Now I have the language to describe all of my intersecting identities. And that's that.
Oh yeah, hi, I'm Moyo. I'm not really sure when I found out about non-binary identities. But I came out as ace when I was 13, and I was in a girls' school, and it was the kind of school that they were like, oh, you can be like any kind of girl you want. So, but I thought that all girls kind of felt like, womanhood doesn't really make sense, so I'm just gonna like pretend and perform it, but there's so many different ways to perform it. I didn't know that people felt that way about being non-binary. Like, I knew what it was. I knew I was around women. I knew that you could be any type of woman you want, and I thought I could just be like any type of woman that I wanted to be. But turns out I'm just non-binary. and that I didn't. I felt like for a long time I was like clinging to black womanhood because, like, just because of the way that like racism exists and like black bodies are policed. So I felt like I should be proud of being like a black bisexual woman and being ace and just being proud of that. But then I realised that wasn't me, and it was totally okay to not be a woman, and that's kind of my journey. It wasn't really like realising that non-binary genders existed, it was more realising that's something that I could be and something that I could exist as. And then when I came to university and I saw just non-binary people just being like non-binary people, I was like, shit, I'm gonna follow. And here I am now, just being myself. I don't really feel that much of a connection towards like gender presentation. Like, I think that like when I was younger I really liked femme stuff, and now I kind of like math stuff, and that will probably change. I feel like in the future I may go back to dresses. It's not really, it's just how I'm feeling. I feel like at the moment I just want to dress comfortably. And yeah, being non-binary is just being my carefree self, and that's the only way I can really express it.
Those are some really good ones and hard to follow. So Toby? So like, I didn't know I was non-binary until I went to university, because I'd only really been around a few trans people, so I'd never even explored my gender, although I knew that I wasn't a guy. I just actively didn't know what to call myself. So I was quite confident when I went to university that I was just a pan guy who was happy, and then I started like meeting other non-binary people and questioned my gender, and quite quickly realised that I wasn't just a pan guy, I was a non-binary, pan-romantic, grey asexual. And all of a sudden, it would be like I'd introduce myself to my friends again as a new person, because with all this new information, I could better describe myself. But I kind of found that, for me, being non-binary has been a very much an uphill battle, because as someone who was born male, being non-binary for someone who's born male is a huge difficultness of trying to be a mix of either androgynous or looking effeminate, which, while I'm fine looking effeminate sometimes, I also do have a masculine side, which for a long time I suppressed because it caused me dysphoria, and I thought that invalidated my and everyone else's experience as non-binary people. And that was something that took me a very long time to sort of comfortably settle, that my non-binary identity doesn't mean that I have to look any way. And I think that's something that, when I got involved in NUS, I especially started challenging, because I realised it wasn't just me being affected by that, but so many other people, and I met some absolutely amazing people. And I think another thing to talk about is the fact that if you're autistic, which I am, you face another battle, which is proving that your gender identity is valid over your autism. That just because you're autistic, all of a sudden it's, oh no, it's an autistic trait, you just don't understand gender. And I'm like, no, I understand gender perfectly well. I'm sure that my autism definitely influences my gender and my expression, but I am a non-binary autistic person, and I think we don't get enough talks from autistic people talking about queer experiences. So I'm actually happy to be able to talk about that a little bit.
Would you like to ask your question?
I will. Okay, so the thing that I want to talk about with regards to non-binary identities is how they intersect with the gendered aspects of attraction and sexuality. We're going to dive right in. And the reason I want to talk about this is because I did ID as a lesbian for so long, and I was a lesbian. And then when things began to shift for me, so did my sexuality. And I found myself starting to become attracted to men in a certain way. You know, they're still not my favourite, but you know, I dabble. And so yeah, I think it's a difficult topic, because I see a lot of discourse about, like, if someone is non-binary and a lesbian, people get really upset about that and say that doesn't make sense. And, you know, and that's kind of just the surface of it. But I do think that being non-binary and non-binary identities can somewhat throw a wrench in the works of our structured understanding of sexuality, because the only way we define sexuality is through gender, the genders we're attracted to. But then that causes issue, because does that mean only bi plus pan people can be attracted to non-binary people? And we know that's not true. Like, you know, I'm sure plenty of non-binary people have dated people who identify as lesbians or gay or even straight. And I think something that's can be interesting to talk about is the way gender is actually not an entirely internal thing, and that many aspects of it are external, and the way we often can define our gender through the way we interact with other people's genders. And it can be a kind of a refracting and realigning of ourselves to fit with, sorry, I'm getting a bit rambly here, the people that we're engaging with. What was my next point? So yeah, sorry. I just want to say that obviously there's such a full spectrum of non-binary identities, and I don't want to invalidate anyone because there's just so many different experiences and narratives, and I don't want to be prescriptive at all. But I think that we should be taking this amazing sudden movement about non-binary people that's really entering the mainstream narrative to reframe how we look at sexuality, and especially with our gendered queer spaces, like gay men's nights and lesbians' night. Like, do non-binary people fit in there? Are we welcome? Are we only welcome if we're presenting aligned a certain way? And we need to stop focusing so much on this alignment idea that if you're non-binary, you're either male-aligned or female-aligned, and that's just not the case. And it kind of shows the prevalence and the kind of rooted nature of that binary thinking, where some non-binary people do feel like they're aligned one way, but plenty don't feel aligned anyway and exist other and outside that whole idea and that whole framework. And then it's like, where do we fit? And who can be attracted to us if we don't even have a gender, you know? And then within that, I want to touch briefly upon the idea that AFAB people who are more masculine of center tend to be desexualized and erased, while AMAB femme people tend to be hypersexualized and hypervisible, and the kind of dichotomy that creates. And I've said some sentences that were kind of joined. Do you guys want to comment?
I don't think it's related to what you're saying, and I wasn't going to say this originally as the answer to your question. It was just like when you were talking about like people interacting with gender, like I would never consider myself butch, but you call me butch, right, all the time, and I love it. It's really nice. Yeah. I don't know, that's not really a comment, it's just like, it's interesting that you see me as butch, and I'm just like, ooh, this is really nice.
Well, I find that I want different people to see me different ways. If I'm with a straight man, I like, in no way am I female to him. Like, go away. But I find with queer women, it can kind of be a bit more fluid. Like, even when I thought I was cis or was cis, that's an ambiguous sort of journey. The butchness and the gender non-conformingness was already a type of gender queerness, and it was, that I felt there was a certain way in which I was being perceived that wasn't necessarily woman,
Wow, this is like opening my mind, because my boyfriend refers to me as like his boyfriend and like uses like male terms and stuff, but I don't identify as a man. I just really like those words.
Yeah, no, same. Yeah,
but like, I don't know if that would be the same if I dated a woman. Like,
well, yeah, I'm dating a lesbian, and I'm perfectly comfortable being called her girlfriend. But she does use male terms of endearment sometimes with me. It's kind of just whatever you feel works for you and that person.
To be honest, I've had a kind of similar experience where my ex-girlfriend, for the couple of years we were together, she would call me her girlfriend, and like I'd be called a draconic lesbian when I was in a bit of a mood, and that was something that like I don't think I'd have been comfortable with until that point, but it felt right in that kind of situation with her. But I think if I was dating a guy and he tried to call me his boyfriend, I'd be like, no. So I kind of... It's weird, because I think it depends as well on the person and the relationship that you share with them, not just it's a guy or a girl or a non-binary person that you're dating.
Do you have anything to say, Kerry?
Well, I don't date people, I just work.
Yeah.
But I want to touch on the bit about like where we fit in lesbian spaces or gay spaces. So, ClexaCon, there are no gender-neutral toilets. Where am I meant to pee?
Oh, there are.
Really? Okay, good. Then I take that back.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, ClexaCon. We're sorry. Is that all you want to say?
Yeah, that's all I got.
But it is a conference called LGBTQ Women and Allies, though. Are we allies to the women?
Are we the T and an ally?
I'm not sure.
I hope we're allies. I would hope so. All right, so we move on to your...
Oh, we can do?
Topic,
Yeah. I was interested in that, though.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, shall we?
Yeah.
Shall we go with that?
Oh,
Do
yeah.
you want to
maybe.
repeat what you said again? Can you remember what you said?
I said something about LGBTQ women and allies, but also this kind of links onto. Okay, so I feel like in a lot of spaces there's like this thing where it'd be like women or non-binary people,
Oh, yeah, we're going to get into that.
and I don't know why I have feelings about it, but it's more. Okay, I know exactly why I have feelings about it. I think that's because I do think women need their own space, but I also understand that there are certain oppressions that we face that are linked together.
Yeah.
But I also understand that, like, if I go to a certain space that's women and non-binary, the assumption will always be that I'm a woman, and I don't really feel comfortable with that assumption. And also, possibly for people who are assigned male at birth, who may be like masculine presenting, they may come into that space, and people may be like, "Oh, you're not supposed to be there," even though by designation they are non-binary and are supposed to be there. And I think this is not, I don't know if it's a problem, but I think there just needs to be a little bit more thought about why we are connecting women and non-binary in these spaces and for what reasons. And I think in certain contexts it makes sense. For instance, like Sisters and Cut is women or non-binary, and I think that kind of makes sense. But I think in other contexts it does not. Just if anyone had any feelings about that.
Actually, I've experienced that myself. Where I've attended it's called the Women's Network at my old uni, but it is women and non-binary. And I went into one of the first sessions, and basically it was like, "Oh no, I'm sorry, guys aren't allowed in here." And I was just like, "I'm not a guy." And they were like, "Well, what are you then? Because you're not a woman." And I was just like sat there like, "You don't even know what non-binary is, like, enough to..."
But they tacked it on.
And then, like, I had to explain what I was, and by the point I'd explained what non-binary was and how, you advertised it's, a safe space for us, especially at that time where I was kind of exploring more the effeminate, intricate part of my gender identity. I didn't feel safe or comfortable there, and I left. And that was a resource that for an entire year I felt was denied to me because of that experience and the anxiety of constantly proving who I am.
Sorry that happened. It's crap.
I find that occasionally the kind of post-it note tacking on of non-binary to women spaces can really just be a lip service thing, and without real consideration for what it means and even understanding what non-binary is. I think it's kind of in, like, I'm coming from liberal university spaces, it can kind of just be we're inclusive without really questioning what that means, what the steps they're taking to make non-binary people welcome in that space and make it accessible for them.
I mean, that happened at our uni.
Yeah.
They changed, without talking to anyone, they changed the women's officer to women and a binary officer. And I was helping because the women officer was one of the people. She's now the women's officer, but I was helping run her campaign. But what I realised when I came to vote for her is that I couldn't vote for her because you have to self-define as a man or a woman. But I was like, this is fine. She's amazing. So, but they just not something they thought about.
Yeah.
I was thinking recently I put forward to run my I Am workshop at a festival that I'm not going to name in Edinburgh, and they basically said no because I'm non-binary, and it's a women's event even though it says for women and non-binary people, and they had this other, what was it was other genders or something. Anyway, it went around, and they then came, after a little discussion, they sort of came back with, oh yeah, well, we've got someone else who is basically running the same workshop. It's not the same workshop because my workshop's my workshop and their workshop is their workshop. And I didn't understand what this other space was. Like, I wish I'd written down how they'd worded it. It was horrible though, and it was very clearly like just like no. If you're non-binary, just no. And that the fact that on the event it was advertised for women non-binary was a lie. Like, I don't know. That's just an experience I had recently.
Sorry, this is. Can I have some water? Sorry.
Do you want to do your topic then?
Oh yes, it's me again. Okay. So I wanted to do a bit of ask a fun question. So I have a query, was in part inspired by the representation in a web series you might have heard of, Carmilla. It was the first show I had ever seen with a non-binary character played by a non-binary actor. So with this in mind, I wanted to ask the panel if they could add a non-binary character to any current or pre-existing TV show. Which one would it be and why? And
All of them.
I'm going to answer first. So, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and I would want them to be Willow's partner after a healthy amount of time mourning the loss of Tara. And it would have, also because it would have addressed her bisexuality, pansexuality, rather than erase her sexual identity by presenting her as gay, because she loved Oz, and she loved Tara. And Willow. And that's me done.
I have a few thoughts about this. I feel I really would have loved to see a non-binary character in Sense8, but it is a perfect show and I will hear nothing wrong against it. So, moving on from that, have you guys watched Skins? Do you remember Skins? And do you remember the season with Frankie? I really, really am so bitter that they did not, because she was set up so perfectly to be this non-binary character, and I really feel that was the intention behind the character creation, and then they just abandoned it, and they abandoned any aspects of her queerness, because they kind of set up that relationship with the blonde girl, and then that was kind of hidden again, and it was just such a wasted opportunity, so I'm bitter about that. But yeah, as I said, every show should have a non-binary character.
Hands down, the Doctor. Just because, it would make more sense, right? If the Doctor was non-binary and then they just change into whatever, because they're non-binary. It just makes sense.
Moyo, would you say that gender is actually a construct?
Yeah. I mean, this is the thing about, people will say, oh, gender's a construct. Yeah, because loads of things are a construct. Money's a construct, but I can't just be money don't exist. It's fine for things to be socially constructed and still matter, but we should understand that these are social constructs, that even within different social groups, there are different ideas of genders across cultures, across time, and that's totally fine and that's totally valid. But that doesn't mean that gender isn't important, because... I don't know, gender is important to me. Yeah. I'm genderful. Just full of it. Busting.
I love that.
What? Sorry.
For me, it would have to be Firefly, just because one of the most amazing shows, and then just to add a non-binary character into the main cast especially would have just been everything I needed.
Oh, is it my turn?
Yeah.
Okay, so, the question's kind of a loose one. It's what spaces are non-binary affirmative that you didn't expect to be? And my answer is Christianity. So I was raised a Christian, and then I came out as non-binary, and then all of a sudden I was how am I gonna deal with that shit? Still believing the God. So, and I found so much affirmative stuff in the Bible. For example, the story of Joseph and the Technicolor Dreamcoat. In the original Hebrew, the coat isn't actually a coat; it's a dress. And the only time that Hebrew word is used as a garment is for other women. So that basically means that his dad gave him his dress, and his like brothers beat him up for it. There's something like weirdly gender non-conforming about that story. And then at the end of the story, when he becomes the advisor in Egypt and his like brothers come and see him, there's just something weirdly gender affirming and beautiful about that. Also, I recently found out that in the original translation of Genesis, it doesn't say God created man and woman. It actually says from man to woman God created them, like implicitly implying a gender binary, like a gender, not binary, the opposite of that, a gender spectrum. And just, there's just loads of ways to read into the Bible. Like, a lot of trans people like to read into Jesus' scars and like link that to like surgery. And just generally, like, God made me. He knew exactly what I was going to do. He knew exactly that I was going to realize I was non-binary, and I am fearfully and wonderfully made. I am non-binary. And yeah, just for me, Christianity is a very affirming space, and I know that's not for everyone. It's just my personal take from it, and I don't want to impose that on other people, but it's affirmative for me. But yeah, I was going to ask that question, like, what spaces have you found affirmative that you didn't expect to be? But you can also say, I didn't. You can say no.
I've had mainly difficulties. I think my response to that question would be, I am surprised at how not affirming a lot of queer spaces are for non-binary people. As you mentioned, Moyo was just in the POC queer representation panel, and they touched on the colonizing nature of our idea of gender, and how so many other cultures already had like third genders, other genders, and anything that's been put in place to erase or criminalize these are colonizing elements. What was the original part of my point?
Queer spaces are not affirmative for non-binary people, or something.
Yeah, so yes, there's this idea that if you can question your gender, if you can be fluid, it's a liberal elite kind of thing, and you have the privilege to do that, when that's just purely not the case. And this, yeah, so, and at the same time, so much of our knowledge and our ideas and about who we are is kind of gatekept behind academia. And it's only accessible to people who can go to university and you know, access these kind of ideas, where so many queer people are working class and don't have access to these things. So there's this, it feels constructed almost. I'm a little bit suspicious of it, because it does seem like a gatekeepy way to stop queer people accessing the information that they need. But having most of my queer spaces that I've been able to enter were coming to cities, coming to university from, you know, a farm. There weren't exactly many queer cows around, I don't know. You know, you kind of expect there to be a level of knowledge there, and it just isn't. And there's a lot of TERFs. There's a lot of TERFs, always, everywhere. And, you know, cis gay men who don't feel that they need to involve themselves with anything beyond themselves. And I heard a lot of affirmative noises, you know what I'm talking about. So that was just a kind of a bit surprising. I thought that these liberal elite spaces would be rife with people like me and people with my experiences, but again, standing kind of alone till I met you guys.
None. I have had to create spaces. And the panel know my story, and I'm kind of deciding how much I want to share at this point. But I'm training to be a therapist, and I've had to take a year out because my class, so this is a class of 40-odd trainee therapists, have refused to use the correct pronouns for me for 2 years of a 4-year course. And I have, and I can feel tears coming, and I have used that shitty experience to go away and create spaces. And we had an event about a month ago, and it was fucking amazing, and there were so many non-binary people in that room. And they came to see us,
Yeah.
and they wanted to hear what we had to say, and we wanted to hear what they had to say. And we need to do that again.
We hosted a version of this panel as a fundraiser to get us here.
Yeah.
Which was amazing.
And we succeeded, we got the money.
Yeah.
Our community supported us and got us here.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think it's pretty much what everyone else has said, is that I've not really come across that many spaces that are actually supportive other than the ones that we've made ourselves. But one situation where I was involved in the making of that safe space, but it was beyond supportive of, was I got asked to work with a sixth form to form a trans and non-binary support group from their recently made Rainbow group. And this was a sixth form, so from my own experience of education, it's incredibly transphobic and homophobic and not a welcoming place. So I knew from the get-go that I was going to be, you know, probably fighting my entire way through this situation. But as we had the first couple of meetings and they took in the information I said, and then all of a sudden I'd be like having the conversation, I'd miss something out just because, you know, I'd be tired that day, and they'd be like, oh, but we've got to make sure that, you know, that gender-neutral toilets are available for this event. And it became one of the most affirming things to be on the outside. It wasn't me that was being affected, but I could see that these young students who had just gone into sixth form were going to get the best support ever. And then they ended up actually taking me in so that I could work with those students and support them. So I was able to work for an entire year supporting trans and non-binary students within their, helping them develop their gender identities. And it was the most affirming thing just to watch young non-binary people and trans people develop and go from ashamed or quiet to loud, proud, and ready to join the fight to make ourselves a place in the world.
Yeah, I think the most affirming thing you can do is just be non-binary so proudly and so openly. If you feel comfortable doing that, because I know in my experience, like, I've had so many people I've met who've come to me after meeting them and saying how me being myself and just kind of being open about who I am really helped them come to terms with their gender, and if they were questioning things. And I know that there have been people who have done that for me. So protect your queer families and just, you know, be the queer you want to see in the world, because you never know who you're going to help, even if someone just sees you on the street and you're like, oh shit, I can do that? All right, you know? That's what I say about that.
Yeah, I mean, we've had many conversations talking about how post-university, I refuse, and I was living in London at the time in Lewisham, which is a horrendous place, if any of you know it, how I refuse to not wear my rainbow laces, how I refuse to not go out on my t-shirt which says they, them pronouns on it, and wear rainbow lanyards and everything like that, because, yeah, I'm scared, but I'm not going to let that fear control me, because if I can validate one person, my power is visibility. That is my weapon, and I'm going to keep being visible until the day that I pass, because if it helps even one person during that time, we've succeeded.
Yeah. Also, I'd just like to add that, like, okay, so I'm not really sure about other LGBT. Basically, I have such anxiety about going to religious LGBT spaces because, like, lesbian and gay Christians still face a lot of crap. So I'm like, look, I don't want to add my non-binary by myself. So just made my own. So then I knew that I would include myself. Yeah. That's it.
You sure did.
Toby, it's your question.
Oh,
And just to make you aware, we have 10 minutes left.
okay. So basically, my kind of thing is the fact that, especially in media and society, it's really common for non-binary people to be shown as a perfect mix of androgynous and skinny, or someone who's born male has to go to the extreme effeminate side, and someone who's born female will generally go to the extreme masculine side, and they have to shun and hate that part of them that they were born into and sometimes grew up in. And for myself, like I've mentioned before, I had a huge internal fight on accepting and expressing my positive masculine traits. Have any of you experienced this, and how do you kind of actively challenge and feel about that sort of scenario?
Interestingly enough, while I was at school and I started presenting more butch and more mask, I still wanted to sometimes be a bit more femme, wear a dress, and I was very much policed in an almost friendly way by my friends, because they're like, no, babe, just be yourself, be a butch. And I was like, okay, you know. Sorry, how did you phrase that question? I'm so bad. Yeah, so there's the idea of androgyny. Did you know that Jeffree Star has actually copyrighted the word androgyny, which is super fun. But yeah, there's that idea, and again, I think it speaks to this binary thinking and this binary structure that it's so prevalent in the way we approach so many things about gender, where, you know, to be non-binary is to be in the middle, but the middle is different depending on where you start from. You know, if you're AMAB, then it takes a certain amount of work to be feminine in a certain way, and then there's the kind of idea that it's more acceptable for AFAB people to be mask, and I think that's often misunderstood. It's acceptable for AFAB people to wear trousers and men's clothes, but if they wear them in a masculine way, that's not okay. And like, I don't know, like, there's a lot of discussion right now about butch women and mask of center AFAB people having male privilege. And I'm just going to kind of leave that as a ... because that literally doesn't make sense.
I think we should all wear whatever the fuck we want to wear.
Yeah.
Shall we? I did have something to say. Other than that, I think I don't. My brain has gone to this place of safety, in that for some people, even though in an ideal world I'm like, you know, everyone wear whatever the fuck you want to wear, and for myself as well, but there are some spaces where it is not safe, and that's like really fucking sad.
I don't dress like this on the street. I'm dressed like this because this is a queer conference.
And I think last night is a good example. We went to see Travis, a gender non-conforming performance artist and all-around awesome human being, and after their performance, they had organised a taxi fund for gender non-conforming people and trans people to get home, which
Yeah, great idea, yeah.
it's a great idea, but isn't it sad that we have to have that? Yeah, I feel like I'm just bringing all this really sad stuff. I'm so sorry, everybody.
Oh no, but I think like it's been a mix of sad stuff, and it's like it's important that people recognise that like not everyone is safe, especially like people who are assigned male at birth who are black and brown.
Oh yeah.
Like it is very unsafe for them to just go out and like present femininely. Like it can mean death, and it's important that people recognise that.
Shall we open up to questions? All right, any questions?
No.
No.
There's 5 minutes left.
Any comments that are more of a question?
I don't have a question, but I just wanted to thank you all for being open and honest and sharing your feelings about how your identities have been changing and how the world is reacting to things. So thank you for being so open.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
I just want to say, like, this panel has been kind of like oxygen for me, like in this place.
Oh yeah?
Like, the first time, like, I can really like relate to like everything you just said, basically. So, and I've also thought about the whole LGBTQ women and allies. Like, where do I, as a pronouns she, her, but gender fluid / non-binary-ish person fit into this, right?
Yeah.
So, I've agreed on might be by the Q or maybe T, but then we have the women part, so I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, whatever. I don't know anymore. Yeah, so yeah, definitely an interesting question to propose. Okay. That was just a comment.
Yeah. Thank you. Glad we can do that for you.
Oh, can I just like make a comment about gender neutral clothing lines? Is that okay?
Oh,
yes,
yeah.
yes.
Okay, just gonna have a little rant. I'm mad because all these gender neutral clothing lines are literally just like trousers and t-shirts. I want skirts, I want dresses with pockets, I want dresses that I can wear with binders, I want dresses that people who are assigned male can wear, I want like tights, I want like crop tops, like crop shirts, it's like long sleeve here, just like shorts, some khakis. I want a gender spectrum of clothing, because if it's gender neutral, it means every single piece of clothing everyone can wear. And I don't know if there's designers in the room. Please make this. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're always all like grey.
Yeah.
Like, where's the color? Where's the pattern? Like, and it's so it's there's such a disconnect between these gender neutral lines of clothing that are created and how non-binary people look. Like, we're so colorful and we like to play so much. Like, all the non-binary people I know have so much fun with how they dress and, you know, and combining all different manner of clothing and accessories in all different kinds of way. And then, you know, you can get some grey sweatpants that are unisex.
It's like, if I get those already, I want something like different. I bought like the best dress in China. It is so great. I'm gonna wear it tonight at the party. It's like cut in a way that I can wear my binder, and then it's like, it says like sound frame on it. Don't know what that means. And then it's like cut here, and then it's like netting, and I'm like, yes, because anyone could wear that. Someone that's like Mel could wear that, I can wear that, everyone's looking cute in it. Weirdly enough, shout out to China, because China has like their feminine clothing is a real mix of like masculinity and femininity in this really playful way, which you would not expect. Shout out to China. But apart from that, that's it.
Okay, 2 minutes.
Any more questions?
I was just interested in what you said earlier about butch. A couple of you said it from different angles, and about the fact you kind of liked being called butch, and found it quite funny that someone was calling you butch and wasn't necessarily how you identified, but actually made you feel good and things. But it was more around the fact that, again, there's been, coming from a trans and intersex and a bunch of other backgrounds, myself personally identifying as non-binary, and I'm 51 and I sit on the kind of the border between young inclusivity, what I call intersectional 2.0, and living next door to a TERF. And someone who would hit me for kind of saying you use that word TERF with me. But it's the fact that they would see using butch of someone who was assigned male at birth, or using butch of someone who was non-binary, as taking from the lesbian community's language. And in other words, is it possible to be butch and not lesbian, or not assigned female at birth, for example? And equally, is it possible to see butch as an interior identity, not always expressed externally with typical stereotypical factors? I mean, I've had a lot of female partners who will say, Katie, you're as butch as anything. And others then say, policing butch, and say, you can't be butch with long hair.
Yeah, I have a lot of feelings about that, and I think we're running out of time, but if you want to talk about
seconds.
that, yeah. Just want to say, yes, it's a complicated one, and a lot of people have a lot of opinions. There is a certain validity. There's this line where butch and femme originally were not just a gender presentation thing. They were connotated a lot of different things within the queer women's community. And you will find some lesbians who find it problematic that bisexual women use that and all this sort of stuff. I just think these are people on Twitter with a little bit too much time. But yes, butch is an interesting one. I'm very protective of butch, and I do think it can be internal and not necessarily expressed. And what means butch to you can mean a different thing to another person. Like, I consider myself butch, even though I dress like this sometimes, in a very flamboyant way, because I think you can be a flamboyant butch. Because I know guys do that. I know there's like flamboyant butch guys, and I'm like, me too, actually. Thanks.
We have to go now. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming.
Thank you very much.